Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 rated sportsbook app out there. Use code DNVR when you sign up for a new account. I'm Rudo, joined by AJ Hafley and Evan Rowell, coming to you guys as we still await a second-round opponent for the Colorado Avalanche. After a bit of a busy Thursday, nothing really happening on this Friday. No signings, no news on Kadri. Avs kind of just hanging out, waiting for things to happen tonight. So we figured, why not have the conversation about the roster going forward? Let me start with this. At this point, can these playoffs significantly affect anyone's contract value anymore? Or is it pretty much what it's going to be?
I still think Gruabaur has some skin in the game because this is where everybody's like, he has to prove himself. And really, his play, I think he's done that. But the injury last year is really like everyone's big remaining question, right? Can he stay healthy? Can he get them past the second round?
All right.
So I think that's Gruabaur's question to answer. That I think, with Landy, kind of have a pretty good idea there. But with Gruabaur, it's whether it's fair or not, the postseason is such a huge part of their reputation. Such a huge part of what teams pay for.
Yeah. Landy's been the same player for like 8 years. So You kind of know what he is. There's nothing new you're going to find out there. With Gruby, you hear it. That's the question mark around the Avs is people always say goaltending despite how well he's played this year. So I'm sure he wants to go out there and prove it because he wants to earn that contract. But yeah, I do feel like money-wise, he's probably looking at, if I show a little bit more in this playoffs, I can probably make a little bit more money and have a say in that.
So maybe a little bit of money still on the table there, but ultimately the Avs have some decisions to make one way or another. We've alluded to this conversation a lot this year. Diving into it, the number we'd come up with, and this is an estimate on our part, was somewhere around $17 million for both Landeskog and Cale Makar. Correct, AJ? You still stand by that?
Yeah. That's under that's
yeah. We'll get into the Cale Bridge conversation.
Yeah, under the assumption that they each get a long-term deal, somewhere around $17 million is, I think, a safe number to operate with.
And with that knowledge, as it stands right now, the Avs have ballpark around $24 million to work with next year. So we're going to see some pieces get shed. I think that is pretty clear. Of the Avs UFAs at the end of the year, you have Landeskog, Saad, Belmar, Soderberg, which is certainly almost going to be gone. And then Nemeth, same thing. A bunch of non-roster regulars that include guys like Tynan, Megna, Burrows, Renouf, etc. And then you have Gruabaur and all of the goalies, basically.
Yeah, Gruabaur, Dubnyk, and Johansson are all UFA.
Yeah.
I don't even know if you mentioned him, but Calvert too.
Yeah,
Calvert as well. Yeah.
Yeah. He's buried on IR, so we forget he exists.
Yeah. But either way, they're losing a lot of pieces, and $24 million to reconstruct, I guess, tinker with their roster a little bit there. One of the big conversations before we get into the Landeskog and Gruabaur conversation, I do want to have a little bit of the Brandon Saad conversation. One, right now, he's making $5 million flat.
Yeah, keep in mind Chicago's paying him $1 million as well, so he's coming off a $6 million deal.
Yep, the deal was for $6 million. I think consensus is with the flat cap, it's going to be hard for him to get to $6 million, regardless of whether he goes into the market or not. Of course, you never know. We've seen teams overpay heavily in free agency before. We'll see it again. But it gets tight quick to afford Brandon Saad. Now, how you navigate this offseason and the expansion draft, maybe it becomes a little bit more realistic. But
yeah.
How do you feel about Saad coming back? How is there much confidence there, or are you living in a world where you're accepting it's not happening?
It's hard to get any sort of feel. He's always felt like a hired gun to me for this year. It's just with those numbers going up with Gruabaur, Landeskog, Makar, it's hard to see how they could realistically keep him because of what they would be able to pay him. But we've seen teams juggle this salary cap before, so who the heck knows?
Just have a mysterious injury that lasts all season.
Yeah.
So, AJ, you kind of feel the same way, hired gun vibes, or do you think there's a better chance than that?
Well, I think from a hockey perspective, he's been a great fit.
Sure.
And he's been effective wherever they've put him. He had a slow start, and it was funny because people were tweeting at me like, I don't think he understands how to play hockey. It was like, that's a whale of an indictment for a guy who's won a Stanley Cup twice as like a top 6 guy.
Yeah.
I think he's such a good fit, and like you see the way that he works with Nichushkin and Jost. Like this version of that line where Jost is like Nichushkin's doing his thing. Jost is just rolling right along. And Saad really kind of ties it together. He makes that line like dangerous.
Yep.
And because those two guys on their own, like they'll score the occasional goal. But Saad, like that's kind of what he does. That guy just finds the back of the net.
Yep.
So I think that he's been such a good fit. And I also think he's at the point of in his career, like, yes, this is theoretically one of his last chances to get like a big deal if he wanted it. But I don't know that he's going to get it in this market. Like maybe the likeliest team to give him a big contract would be like Edmonton. They're going to be in the market. They need help. They have money. They overpay every time they sign anybody to anything. Like it's really, I think it has to do a lot with how much he wants to be here. Because if he tells the Avs, hey, I'll sign for what Toffoli did in Montreal last year, right around $4 million over 4 years, then Colorado should get to work in trying to make that happen. If they just can't, then they just can't. Like, then that's just how life goes, right? But yep. I think I think they should try to to prioritize keeping him if they can. But if it just isn't going to work out, then it's not going to work out. And you replace him internally with a guy like Newhook.
And with like how much he likes Colorado, all that stuff, this is such a hard year to even like get any vibes on that because we can't even go in the locker room. No one knows how anybody fits in. We have to assume everyone talks about how great the locker room is, that he's fit in just fine, and I'm sure he has because he's fit in perfectly fine on the ice. But yeah, you never know. This is his chances as an unrestricted free agent. He's still relatively young. He's not like a pushing 30s, things like that. So a lot, if you look at, if they were to say lose Donskoy in the expansion draft and lose that $4 million, do you go back and say, hey, here's that money? Because that's pretty much like, that's who you'd want to take that spot anyway. So
yeah, easily.
Yeah. So as it stands right now today, the Avs would have 9 regular forwards signed if you include Newhook. Landeskog and Saad would make 11. If they were to lose one in expansion draft, that would go to 10. Now, those other roster spots could be filled by Martin Kaut, could be an 11th there. Realistically, you expect them, if they have the money, to go out and do something in free agency as well, to make 12 probably. You have guys like Logan O'Connor in the system. That could be probably more of a 13th forward, but options for the lineup as well. So,
Sampo Ranta, apparently?
Yeah, apparently.
Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah.
He's just vibing into the lineup, apparently.
Yeah. He's just like, look, good looks and positive outlook on life. Next thing you know, I'm in the lineup.
Look, all right.
On a cup contender.
Maybe he's a coach's dream player because he just does whatever the coach says to do.
Put your head down and go to the net.
Don't overthink it.
Maybe. I mean, you listen to the Minnesota coaching staff talk about him, and they were like, "Look, it's great to see him play this way this year because we've been trying to get this out of him for 3 years, like trying to convince him that he is a big dude that has the ability to just overpower people and go hard." So I guess he finally listened, and now look at him. He's just like, well, I'll just take some fourth line reps on a Stanley Cup contender.
Think, Sampo. Think. You're 6'4", 220.
Yeah.
Anyway, so look, when you're talking about 12 players in a forward core, there's always going to be some fluidity. We're just going to very casually and calmly not talk about Shane Bowers on this show at all. Assuming a Landeskog deal gets done, it's pretty much the one question is Brandon Saad. Which, look, anything can happen. Landy could decide he wants to go make a ton of money and someone could give him a crazy offer. That's certainly on the table. But if I had to pick one free agent the Avs definitely sign this offseason, I'd say Landeskog. I'm curious if you guys would agree, or do you think Gruabaur gets first bite at the cake over Landy?
I don't know, man.
Yeah. Looking at the way the rest of their goalies have played this year, I don't know. I mean, I guess Johansson's been fine, but that's certainly not a guy I'm super excited about. Honestly, I don't even know who the unrestricted free agents are. Freddie Anderson, I think, and he's been terrible. So it's like, how do you, you're going to be a Stanley Cup contender, and just like lose your goalie like this? Landy seems like the obvious answer, but Gruby is the position he's playing makes it difficult.
I mean, I don't disagree. That's why the title of this show is Can They Do Both? Is it not?
Yeah.
We can talk about that in period 2. First, we got to tell you guys about Illegal Pete's. They've been back in action for about a month now with the pandemic hopefully winding down. You can go to your local Legal Pete's. There's one right down by the DNVR bar. So if you want to pick up a burrito from them, highly recommend their steak and potatoes. It's my favorite burrito from them, and it's delicious. So go on down there, get yourself some amazing burritos. They also have an awesome promotion where if you bring a same-day ticket stub from any event in Colorado, you can get upgrades such as a 32-ounce margarita, some other awesome stuff in store as well. Check them out. Get yourself burritos. They're dope. Can't recommend them enough. Also brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 rated sportsbook app out there. Sign up with a new account and use code DNVR. I hope you did yesterday, and I hope you bet on the Nuggets because you would have won yourself $200 in bets for $5. 40-1 odds still going on right now in the basketball playoffs. All you have to do is pick a basketball team to win their upcoming game, and you win $200 in free bets. Super easy, super awesome. Have to use the DNVR code to get signed up for that odds boost, but they also have odds boosts every single day, which you can use in all of the major sports, as well as some less major sports that you can bet on too. So go over there, win yourself some money with DraftKings Sportsbook. They're super safe and reliable, extremely easy to use, especially when it comes to depositing and withdrawing money. Must be 21 or older, Colorado only. Other terms, restrictions, and conditions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. $5 bet paid out in $200 in free credits when the basketball team wins their next game. Gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. And of course, if you haven't seen the vibes from last night at the DNVR bar, go check them out just to see what you're missing because the bar's dope.
It was crazy. It was weird, but amazing, but crazy. I highly recommend it. Avs fans, I hope Sunday's turnout is even better than yesterday's turnout for the Nuggets because it's the first game of round 2. So come out.
It's going to be hype. There's no doubt about it. I'm excited to get back to it. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun for sure. So come on down to the DNVR bar. Also consider signing up for a DNVR membership. The annual membership gets you a bunch of amazing stuff like bigger beers. You get a free shirt. You get a free mask with it as well. And, you know, our content. That's that little nugget as well. You can get all of that. So, yeah, support us, please. Thank you. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Let's work our way backwards from the forwards here, actually. Well, we'll save the Gruabaur conversation for a little bit later. Obviously, they have to sign Cale Makar. He is an RFA, however, so their defense outside of Cale Makar really doesn't need very much work. Girard is signed long-term. You have Taves for the next 3 years. You have 2 more years of Ryan Graves. You do have to figure out something with Connor Timmins potentially. He's an RFA, but not in line for a significant raise. Yeah, not going to take it. Not going to take a ton there. You have Byram still on his ELC for another 2 years, and just like that, you're basically done with a top 6.
Eric Johnson.
Yeah, with EJ signed for 2 more years. So
maybe that's the conversation we should be having.
What
do you do with EJ?
Yeah. That is the question, is it not?
That $6 million is kind of the key to their whole offseason.
$6 million, yes. Is $4 million there enough? I guess is the question.
That right there pays for Brandon Saad.
It does. 1-to-1.
You know, well, and then if you assume that Donskoy or Comfer or Graves are the guy that
another
goes
$3-ish million, yeah.
Then somewhere in the neighborhood of another $3 and $4 million.
So you're sitting on 7 to play with.
Yeah, and so suddenly, you know, that's money. I think that's money that you could give Tyson Jost a multi-year deal. You could give Connor Timmins his qualifying offer. You could slot in any extra ELCs you need, and then that would be Saad's money right there.
Yeah, Yeah, that would be. It's an interesting conversation, and there's two sides of this story. First of all, how do you move the money out? We've talked a little bit before about if this is a buyout
Yeah.
with 2 years left on the deal, that puts the Avs $2 million in the hole for the next 4 years.
Yeah. That's $2 million right off the top of their. It's just gone.
Which
For
4
4
years
straight
hurts.
years.
4 years hurts.
Yep.
You could essentially accomplish the same thing if you retain $2 million and ship him out, and then it's only a 2-year problem for you.
Yeah. You have to find somebody that wants to pay $4 million for a guy who is injured as often as he is.
Which I don't think is necessarily impossible.
I don't think it's impossible, but we saw how hard it was last offseason to move money for like guys like Tyler Johnson could have been had completely for free.
Yeah.
That was obviously an extreme situation last offseason with the money problems that teams had. But with EJ, like I don't think that the need to move him is so desperate. You have to start. Like the comment section's talking about attaching a first round pick to move him. Like I've been all about like screw this draft, right? But get something for the first round pick. Don't
just addition by subtraction it.
Yeah. I mean, the Orpik thing that happened with Washington, like that would be acceptable if they could find a taker. They pay them a price of some kind. That team buys him out, and then the Avs could freely re-sign him for $1 million or whatever.
I mean, the interesting thing about that conversation is you're not allowed to do that if the NHL can find that you tried to do that intentionally.
I mean, we've seen 2 instances in the last couple of years of teams re-signing players that they bought out, or
like,
players that in situations like that where it's like
it would be very hard for the NHL to prove it. But like the Orpik situation was investigated. They did look at it to make sure that this wasn't their plan all along.
Yeah, I know the Avs tried to trade Orpik.
Yeah,
they thought that when they got him, they had somebody lined up to
pick it up.
Yeah, like they would have retained and just like here, he's yours, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just gonna say with EJ, it's obviously none of this matters if he's not healthy. Like the whole trade talk thing is just he's around the team a little bit more now. And I asked, McKinnon of what it's like, and he said he's, his spirits are up, but it didn't sound like he's anywhere close to a return, which would obviously change a lot about how this summer goes and things like that.
If you get to like August or September and it's clear that he's still not healthy, it might be LTI retirement time. Yeah. That's one way to find yourself some money.
Well, and then that doesn't do you any good. When
I get it. Yeah,
when the whole offseason is taking place and everybody's made all their moves and shit, the EJ, if that's the case, if he misses next year on LTIR, like that's okay, like then that's a thing. You have, you have the money for that season, but you missed the off-season window to make genuine use of it.
You still provide yourself opportunities at the deadline with things like that, but
yeah, it's
a different conversation.
It's nowhere near like Brandon Saad is just off your roster now because you didn't have the money at the time, and
mean
that's something that they need to know his injury timeline.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they have a better concept of it than we do anyway. But
The whole, I mean, like AJ said, the Eric Johnson situation is not like a huge concern, at least for me. One, because, you know, I've been asking about him this week to the coach and to the players just because I'm more like, it's been such a weird year with isolation. I'm just like, hopefully that mentally these guys are able to be okay. And like, that's kind of why I was checking in with him. And I'm happy that he's around the team. But I also still believe that $6 million or not, a healthy Eric Johnson would have been a big help for this team, I think, especially on this third pair.
Patrick Nemeth just wouldn't have happened.
EJ's their fourth best defenseman if you drop him into the lineup today.
Yeah.
And he no longer has to be the guy. Like, this would have been such a perfect situation, and this whole situation is just kind of stunk.
I mean, then you have a legit right side with Timmins, Johnson, and Makar. Mm-hmm. And your left side is Taves Gerard and Graves / Byram.
Yeah.
Whatever in this conversation. Yeah. Like, it would not have been hard to have to envision, like, oh, your third pairing could have easily been Byram and Johnson if you wanted.
Yep.
Like, we've seen the Avs have an elite defense without EJ, but it's
be elitier.
Yeah, like, it's easy to imagine where you're just like, this third pairing doesn't have the, oh my god, what are you about to do with the puck?
the total like, sphincter pairing is no longer
straight up. The butt pucker does not exist when it's just not at the same level. Like, he has done some dumb shit with pucks over the years, of course, but
not as often.
Yeah, with Nemeth, it's like every time he gets the puck, like during that last game against game 4, like, we were actively like cheering successful breakouts and clears of the zone.
Yep. Uh-oh. Chat's taking his pants off.
Yeah. Chat got after dark in a hurry.
Good Lord.
It's not DNVR after dark yet. Please no.
Yeah, it's still pretty sunny outside.
Yeah, only like 8 hours until it gets dark. That's more like 7 or 6. Anyway, the other defensive conversation, Cale Makar is going to get signed. I mean, obviously. Yeah. The question is, to what, how much, how long? We've talked a lot about a long-term deal. That number at absolute minimum starts with an 8. More realistically, might be in the 9+ range. But what if it's not long-term? We discussed this a little bit the other day, where you could give Makar a 3-year deal and still have him on RFA at the end of it.
Some of this is also that the market for all of these young defenders is coming up at the same time.
Yep.
You have Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, Miro Heiskanen, and Rasmus Dahlin are all going to be.
The next wave of greatness is about to get paid.
Yeah, and I don't know what Adam Fox's situation is. Let me see real quick.
Off the top of my head,
he might have one more year.
In any case, Evan,
he's got one more year.
What are your thoughts, Evan, on a potential bridge for Cale Makar? Are you a fan, or would you just go long term?
I don't like the bridge. I'd rather just rip the Band-Aid off and get him signed now, because say it's a 2 or 3 year deal, then you're, good Lord, what could that contract look like in 2 or 3 years? Then you're talking even more. So that's my opinion, but the player also has a say in this, because they might say, hey, I'll take a bridge now, and then maybe in a few years the cap is going to look a little bit different.
Well, I think that's the conversation for those guys, right? Is that
they want to get paid too. It's
you see that the cap is going to be flat, and if Makar signs a 6-year deal, the cap stays flat for the first 2 years of it. He's perfectly happy. Nobody's out there resetting his market, getting paid higher than him, right? But what if, and I'm telling you, Quinn Hughes is taking a bridge deal. They can't pay him on a long-term deal. They just Quinn Hughes is getting a bridge deal because they have to. But what if what if all those other guys take bridge deals and Makar's looking at that landscape, and by the fourth year, all those other guys, year 4 starts, all those other cats have signed long-term deals. And those guys are all now making more money than Cale Makar.
Yeah.
Like, look, there's security, obviously, in signing a long-term deal today. The Avs would love to give him 8 years and just be like, okay, your 20s are done. We have you through your 20s, just like they did with Sam Girard. Done. We're finished with that. We don't have to worry about this again until you are a 30-year-old, which is insane to think about.
It's so one of the things with a bridge deal for Makar is it's gonna be pretty tough to give him a 2-year bridge, because if the Avs do that,
yeah,
it's up the same year that Nathan
Could you
McKinnon's
imagine?
Contract is up.
Makar and McKinnon.
Yeah.
That's a fun summer.
About to spend $25 million on 2 players in the same offseason.
Well, and the thing with McKinnon, though, is that he can sign the year before if he wants to.
He could sign early. That's true.
So even if you give him 2 years, you might already know McKinnon's number.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean,
So,
Makar could do the same too. But, I mean, he's more likely to wait.
What do you mean?
Like, if he takes a 2-year deal, he can still sign a year early. Like,
Oh,
extend
yeah.
that deal.
He totally could.
Yeah.
But I think the point of signing a 2-year, I don't think there is a point in signing a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
I think if he's signing a bridge, it's a 3-year deal, because that way by the 3rd year, they start to expect the cap to go up. They said, we expect the cap to be flat for 3 years. This is year 1, 2 more years of that. So he gets through the flat cap. He's still making bank. He's still making $8 million or, whatever it may be. But by the 3rd year, the cap will start to go up. And then he can start to be like, I'm going to make all that money.
From the team perspective, you squeeze another RFA year out of Makar that way as well for a reduced price.
Yeah.
With the 3rd year. But
I did see Friedman saying that 5 years of a flat cap.
I mean,
if that's going to happen, like if that's what teams operate under the assumption of 5 years of flat cap. First of all, these guys aren't getting paid the things that we think they're going to get paid.
Nobody is. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're operating under 5 years of a flat cap, long-term contracts are either not going to happen, or they're going to, all of the numbers that we've seen in the last few years are going to be irrelevant, and everybody's going to sign for cheaper because it's just a different landscape. Most of these contracts that have been getting signed with the assumption that the cap continues to go up over time.
And let me preface this by saying no one knows right now for sure. Like, the NHL isn't going to have realistic projections on when their cap is going to start going up until they get back to 100% attendance revenues and things like that, which won't happen until next season pretty much.
Yep.
But I will say, and this is a larger conversation that I'm sure we can have in the offseason, you're watching dudes like Mookie Betts get paid $500 million for their contracts. Yes, I know it's over 14 years or whatever, but players in other sports getting 20, 30, 40 million dollars a year, and the NHL's nowhere near that mark for their best players.
No, the revenues are nowhere near the marks of
the
other sports.
I hear that, but there's a discrepancy there that is interesting. Leave it at that.
I mean, the league doesn't make nowhere close to the amount of money that those other leagues do.
I hear you.
And that's what that's like, the salary cap is determined by an equation built off of revenues. So,
but
There's relief
Look.
pitchers making more than Nathan McKinnon.
Yeah,
That's just
right.
the reality of the
Right. And
Yeah,
I
mean,
hear you there, and I understand
how many shitty basketball players are toiling around on like on a bench unit on a bad team. He just randomly has a $9 million salary, and you're like, what's happening here?
And look, I understand that every owner in the NHL is not Kroenke, but there are plenty of owners in the NHL where if the salary cap went to 100 million overnight, they'd be just fine. Anyway, conversation for a different day. Cale Makar Bridge, AJ, you said 8 million. You think that's about fair?
I genuinely don't know.
Okay.
And look, if they're going to operate under a 5-year flat cap expectation, if that's how they feel about it, then just give him a 6-year deal. But it can't be $10 million.
Yeah.
What's Shabbat's deal?
8 by 8.
Yeah, you almost wonder. I would have always assumed it's more than that, but if it's a flat cap, you almost wonder if you say, hey.
I think if it's a flat cap, I think he has to come in above Shabbat and under Rantanen.
8.5-ish.
Yeah, I mean Rantanen at 9.25. If he came in at 9,
that's under.
It's under, but I don't think it can be. I think it can be. That would be so funny. I just don't. That's I think if they're the flat cap, if that's the expectation for 5 years, then it changes this whole thing. Honestly, Landeskog. I don't know that they can give him $7 million anymore.
All right. Well, if you're tired of coming in under the measurement, Manscaped can make it look bigger.
Make it look bigger. It's a good life hack right there.
God damn it.
Just make it look bigger.
Easy.
Yeah.
Easy. Go to manscaped.com, use code DNVR to get 20% off the Perfect Package 4.0. Get their new Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer and make it look bigger. It's that simple. You can also get all of their other products, which help with all of your hair care, not only below the belt, but for your beard, for your chest. You can even shave your head with it if you want. It's awesome. Their products work great. Cannot recommend them enough. Manscaped. They're dope. Also brought to you by Gabi Insurance. That's gabi.com/DNVR to check them out. It stands for Get a Better Insurance. They save hundreds of dollars for pretty much everyone at DNVR who's gone over there and done it. Checked out their home and auto insurance. Completely free to use, and they will give you the best rates out there that you can get. A few people even saved over $1,000. So why not do it? It's completely free. Jump in there, save yourself a bunch of money so you can go spend it on stuff like DNVR shirts and other awesome stuff. Also brought to you by the Colorado XOs. If you haven't heard, Colorado's kind of the coolest place in America for rugby right now. Up in Infinity Park at Glendale, they host the men's and women's national teams. So if you want to see the best rugby in the country, this is the place to do it. But they also have a new rugby venture and team, which is the XOs. The Colorado XOs are athletes who have competed at the highest level of their respective sports, including football, basketball, baseball, wrestling, soccer, track and field, and others. These athletes possess the necessary skill to excel at the game of rugby. Many of these guys you may have heard of from particularly football. There's a couple of guys that played in the NFL that are now trying their hand at rugby. You can learn more about it at infinitypark@glendale.com. And of course, follow DNVR Rugby on Twitter. Our guy Colton Strickler does regular interviews and podcasts with guys. Even if you're new to the sport, he has 101 Rugby podcasts, so you can learn and get into the game. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Let's get into the conversation as this will tie back into Landeskog. Phillipp Gruabaur. Close your eyes today. What do you give him? That he actually stays. I know in la Magic Land, you give him $3 million and he stays, but that's not happening.
You're taking a pay cut, boy.
Yeah.
5 by 6? I don't know.
Which one's the 5 and which one's the 6?
5 is years.
5 years at $6 million.
Yeah.
So he's gonna get a lesser contract than Jordan Binnington did.
Is anyone on earth using Jordan Binnington's contract as a real comparable right now? I mean,
the Avs might try at this point, but yeah, I don't
well,
know.
you know, Phillipp Grubauer's agent is alive. Assuming that he continues to have a pulse, I don't see how in the fuck that Binnington. That Gruabaur gets less than Jordan Binnington.
How old is Binnington actually? I don't actually know.
27.
So he's a couple years younger than Grub.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see how he gets less in the money category for sure. There's no universe where I see him getting less than 6.
Well,
I remember early in the year, people were like, I wouldn't give Gruabaur 6, and now it's like, well, get used to it, get ready for more.
Well, there were a couple contracts signed.
You have the Markstrom deal too,
Yeah, the Markstrom deal over the summer, the 6x6, and then Binnington got a 6x6, and it's like, well,
this
sort of
is just
sets
kind of
that
what
market.
it do.
Yeah, that market just sort of got set.
So, in a world where Makar takes a bridge, let's just say it comes in at 9, just for theoretical sake. You have Landy coming in around 7-ish.
Yeah, put him at 7 for right now, generously.
So that's 16 million.
I'm feeling kind.
16 million right there. If you're signing Gruabaur for 6 flat, that's 22 million. That gives you, if you're the Avalanche, 2 million to work with, plus whatever you lose in the expansion draft to sign guys like Jost, Timmins, and at least one forward and a backup goaltender.
You already have a backup goaltender.
Frankie.
France. I totally forgot about France. Dude, if you go on IR, you don't exist in my world, apparently. You just
or the Avs world.
Yeah. So you have $2 million plus whatever you get in expansion draft to sign 2 or 3 forwards, including potentially Brandon Saad, and then clean up your RFAs.
Sounds like a fun summer.
Yeah,
I think they'll be more aggressive than that. I just think that they know, like, this is the team. Like, they've
time to go. Yeah. Well, and if you're generous in the expansion draft, say they take Donskoy, that's 3.9. You have 5. You have nearly $6 million to work with. You can sign Saad with that. You have $2 million in flexibility that gets you Joe signed. Maybe you need to move out a bit piece to clean stuff up a little bit, or you can have the EJ conversation, which we already did.
I would say the small benefit of Makar as an RFA is that there's no realistic expectation that he gets signed like early in the offseason.
He'll get done when he gets done. Yeah,
that's going to be a training camp contract.
Yep.
In my opinion, if it gets done before training camp starts for next season, I will be it will be a surprise for me.
It's going to be in training camp, and the Avs are going to be like, "All right, Cale, so we have exactly $8,271,000 left, so that's what you're getting."
Maybe he just
takes a
1-year deal, and then depending on how much cap room the Avs have every year, he just takes contracts like that. Like,
I just take whatever's left of the salary cap.
You guys have 8.2. All right, I'll take $8 million this year, and then next year, what's that? You guys have 9.5. Cool, I'll take that. That sounds great.
Because we're all assuming the league is going to go back to the normal schedule next year.
That's the
So
they are.
it's going to be like a crazy short summer with training camp being like,
Yep.
what, 45 days after the season actually ends? The
Something like
playoffs
that.
end?
Yeah.
So
This year's Stanley Cup Finals participants are going to they are going to be popular picks to suffer from the fatigue and the hangover.
Yeah.
Because they're just not going to get any time off. Any injuries, any lingering injuries, any surgeries that need to happen, whatever. There's a good chance all that stuff will carry over into next year.
Interesting question here in chat from Edwin. What's the shortest contract you can get Gru to sign? He will be 30 next year. Which
how old's Markstrom?
Younger than that, I'm pretty sure.
I mean, he was the hot goalie prospect forever, and then he finally figured it out. Just
to answer a question earlier.
He's not. He's 31.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
The free agents this year in the goaltender market: Chris Driedger, Mike Smith, Phillipp Gruabaur, Peter Mrazek, Linus Ullmark, Tuukka Rask, Jonathan Bernier,
Freddie Anderson.
So
Antti Ranta, Freddie Anderson. I'm trying to see if there's any other potential starters here. Not really.
So you're either YOLOing on Anderson to bounce back, you're YOLOing on Ranta to not be broken constantly, or you're YOLOing on what Chris Driedger did this year being real.
Yeah, 27-year-old Chris Driedger is 23 games of 207 goals against and 927 save percentage.
It's good, but is that the real
played
Chris
one
Driedger?
Played one playoff game and got replaced by Spencer Knight. So
yep.
I think that probably, for me, that should have put a hard stop on the Chris Driedger fanaticism that has developed within Avs fans.
But if you're not going with Gruabaur, I think the most realistic look is not necessarily with Washington, but going back to the trade well.
Well, and like
so
the other
Washington,
the other name on there, like both of the Carolina guys, Reimer and Mrazek, are there. If Mrazek's healthy, Mrazek's been like a fine starter, right? But are you getting any better?
Mrazek is like what people thought Gruabaur was in the first 2 years on steroids. That dude is the streakiest goaltender alive.
Yeah, and like his numbers always kind of just end up okay
in the middle because he has a month of unbelievable fire and then is actually like a moon of Saturn that cold.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, there's a reason they've kept James Reimer around.
Yeah.
As like the buffer, just in case, you know.
Yep, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, the shortest if you're Gruabaur, you're saying, this is my time. I want a long-term deal. He took 3 years last time. That's why I said 5, because that's more of a hope than an expectation, because I think 5 would be the shortest he would take till he's 35.
Yeah, and look, if depending on his postseason run, you know, at this point, this is his third postseason run with the Avs, and his first one he had a 925, then he had a 922, and so far this year he has a 936.
And 3 second-round appearances with one cut short by injury. But
so I think we're beyond the days of he's bad in the postseason because of a couple of relief appearances in Washington and the first 2 games of that Columbus series.
Yep.
Where he got replaced and then they went on to win the cup. Like, he's been a good postseason goaltender. He's been a good regular season goaltender. Look, I think they just have to sack up and pay the man. He's comfortable in Colorado. He looks, I don't know, the team looks, and I've usually have hated these arguments in the past, but the team just plays a different way in front of him. They play such a calm game in front of him.
It's painfully obvious how much better they play in front of him this year. It's
Yeah.
painful.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see what happens next year when they get Francouz back there, and it's like that's a guy that they also played with a lot of trust in the year before.
Yep.
But now they're better. It would be interesting. So, Washington would be interesting, but you're kind of you're doing the same thing that you did with Gruabaur, where
how many times can you go to that well and get Phillipp Gruabaur is the question.
Yeah,
how
well,
consistently
like,
can you find that dude? Yeah.
Varley was that was an easy, he was going to be a starter. He was 22 at the time. That was a
slam dunk. Yeah.
That was such a good value deal for them. It sucks that it ended up in nothing, that Varley never won anything in Colorado.
Varley's
that's such a bummer.
Still far and away the second best goaltender in Avs history. So
yeah, but are you really banking your future Stanley Cup contender on Vitek Vanacek?
It was,
and if you are, why was the organization that just gave him up not willing to do the same?
I mean, it's a hard comparison, right? Because when the Avs made the Gruabaur move, they were just starting to come into this run of playoffs that they're on now. And they had a transition period of a year where they had both Varley and Gruabaur as well.
Yeah, well, and they could afford that because Varley was on that long-term deal.
Yep.
And then Gruabaur was on the classic, it's the easiest, I always say it's the easiest contract to sign in the NHL. The backup trying to become a starter gets a 3-year deal at $3 million, right around $3 million, and then gets 3 years to figure it out.
And we haven't really talked about it much for a year because he hasn't played, but generally, Francouz is probably, I think this podcast is a little bit lower on his starter potential than a lot of people talk about.
Yeah, but if he repeats the year that he had, they have a really good backup.
Yeah, for sure. But having a really good backup doesn't feel as good as having a real starter if you're YOLOing on another goaltender.
Yeah, it's true.
In any case, final thoughts here really quick on the Avs situation for next year, as we do have to wrap up and get to TDSP, which I have delayed heavily already.
I like that. I think that should be a shirt. Sack up and pay the man. Because I don't see any other choice that they have right now. The goalie list sounded, especially with the position this team's in, the free agent goalie list sounded like just not interested.
It's a lot of mediocrity, man.
I was going to say, I like Freddie Anderson before this year, but he seems like he's fallen off a cliff.
Yeah, he's had a tough year. It's a bad time to have a contract year. Is a bad time for him to have his worst season.
Yeah.
All right. I guess we're going to get out of here then.
Sack up and pay the men. There we go. That's final thoughts.
Final thoughts, sack up and pay the men. Thank you, everyone, for watching, consuming the podcast, however you do. We appreciate it very much. Be sure to like and subscribe to the YouTube video. We see all y'all new people joining us for the playoffs, so give us a little click down there. Much appreciated. We are out of here for the day. We will probably be back tomorrow to discuss in depth whoever the Avs are playing on Sunday. Yep. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Until then, we will talk to you all later.